Hello, I'm Matthew Hall, author of The Coroner and the second book in the Jenny Cooper series, The Disappeared. In The Disappeared, Jenny Cooper investigates the disappearance of two Muslim university students in Bristol. They, in fact, disappeared 7 years ago. They're declared statutorily dead, which then enables the mother of one of them to come forward and ask the coroner to find out what happened to them. Very quickly, Jenny discovers that security services thought these two young men had been radicalised and had left the country to join a terrorist organisation. What she discovers is something rather different. The reason I chose to write about characters who've disappeared, I felt disappearance is actually a fate worse than death. It's more frightening not to know where someone has gone. Is really quite hellish, and I wanted to deal with the grief of this mother who doesn't know where her son has gone. It also connects back to a sequence of dreams I had when I was a much younger man, which was about I was dealing with the fear of disappearing. And it was the greatest terror I'd ever known, the worst nightmares I'd ever had. And I wanted to look into that because I remember reading somewhere on one of my many spiritual quests, I imagine, that the notion of hell was not something tangible. It was an absence of everything. And that notion of absence, of disappearance, conjured up for me something really very, very dark indeed, and I wanted to peer into that and see where it took me. So I have driven Jenny Cooper into this dark place, and it spurs her on to investigate some quite dark things about herself, which are surfacing throughout the book. Like most coroners in Britain, Jenny Cooper was a provincial solicitor. She was a solicitor for North Somerset Local Authority, and she dealt with childcare cases. The really difficult family law cases where children are taken away from their families by the social services. So she's used to very emotional situations. What happened to Jenny was that her work took an emotional toll on her. Her marriage gradually began to fracture with her rather overbearing husband, who's a heart surgeon. They went through an uncomfortable divorce, and her teenage son, Ross, who was 15 years old, chose to stay with his father rather than his mother, whom he thought was slightly unreliable or untrustworthy. Jenny is coroner for the fictional Severn Valley district. This area takes in a northern slice of Bristol and a slice of the South Gloucestershire countryside alongside the Severn estuary. It's both rural and very urban at the same time. It allows me as a writer to explore all sorts of storylines. Jenny lives on the northern side of the Severn estuary in South Wales. Each day she crosses over the Severn Bridge to go to her work in the city. I see that as the division in her life between the sacred and the profane. Also, there's something about the bridge which to me symbolises the passage from life to death and then back again to life at the end of her working day. Jenny lives in a little stone cottage. I pictured it as a little 2-up, 2-down cottage with a beautiful garden with a stream at the end of it. It's a very peaceful place for her to retreat from her harrowing work in the city. I like to think that after battling all this injustice in court all day, that she is allowed some peace and reflection. At the beginning of the Disappeared, Jenny's in a session with her psychiatrist, who gives her a phrase. He says that sometimes you're helped by strange saviours. And Jenny's strange saviour comes along in the person of a rather dissipated Scottish lawyer called Alec McAvoy. His story is that he was a solicitor, but he was struck off after he got in trouble with the law himself, but he's gone back to be what we call a legal executive. He works for a solicitor's firm, doing more or less a solicitor's job, but he's rather more shifty than that. He's dealing with criminals, he's dealing with informers, he's probably helping to massage evidence in various criminal cases, he's probably helping to arrange witnesses, to trim what people say to suit the circumstances. He is the kind of lawyer that I've encountered in the criminal law. He's completely amoral. But the strange thing is, sometimes you do need amoral lawyers, especially defence lawyers, to get justice. It sounds strange, but particularly if you're involved in a case where there's an organised attempt on the part of the prosecuting authorities to manipulate the result, you're going to have to fight fire with fire sometimes, and it takes lawyers who are prepared to bend the evidence a bit in order to achieve justice. Well, in order to justify that, you've got to have a very strong idea of what justice is at the beginning, but sometimes it is necessary. The writing process is a long one. There's no way around that. The Coroner was maybe 5 or 6 years in the making, in that it took me that long to crystallise the character, who she was and what she was. The actual process of writing the book took a little under a year. Having repeated that process twice more, I know it takes me a good year to write a book. The first several months are engaged in research and in also meticulously planning the plot. I've read that some British writers don't plan their stories. I can't begin to understand that. I work, I suppose, as I used to work as a screenwriter, by planning every chapter and then planning the scenes within every chapter. And I'll spend 5 or 6 weeks, perhaps, even working out the mechanics of the story. And then finally, when I have a document which lets me know exactly what's going to happen in every chapter, then I feel that I've got the freedom to explore character and dialogue within that framework. Research the novels. I have a number of coroners I would talk to. I used to be a lawyer, so I know a little bit about coroners' courts. I have a lot of friends who are still practicing lawyers. They're very important sources of research to me. I try to keep abreast of the law as it develops. I'm very interested in the law, so that's really quite a pleasure for me. When it comes to other aspects of the plot, I will seek out professionals who are expert in those fields, or draw upon quite a large network of friends. But I think it's very important to be as factually accurate as you can, or at least to know the facts and then to bend them to suit your story, but in the knowledge that you actually know what the truth is in the first place. The Disappeared ends with a bombshell for Jenny Cooper when she's told something very disturbing about her distant past. The truth of what actually did happen to her will finally be revealed in the third book in the series, which is to be published in January 2011.